So welcome everyone to Bookaccino Live for May. It's May 11th, and we have got a great lineup of books for you. So let's get started. First, we're going to go through your top picks from April's presentation. These were the books that you said you were most interested in reading. First is The Bookwoman's Daughter by Kim Michelle Richardson. We know that you're huge fan favorites of her and her work, and I'm going to be doing an interview with her in the upcoming weeks. I'm reading it right now. Really, really terrific book. Next, we've got The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, which is by Kimberly Brock, and I am going to be interviewing her as well. And we've got The Lies I Tell. Let's move this real quick. We've got The Lies I Tell, which is by Julie Clark, and that book is coming out soon. I've already read it. Last weekend, I did a Mother's Day Saturday and sat and read the entire book, and it is so good. Anybody who loved Last Flight, you're going to love this as well. Adriana Trigiani's The Good Left Undone. Adri actually just sent me a note this morning and said I was the first person that went out and championed this book with her. I did something with her last September. So really nice to see that you're all looking forward to reading that. And Sandra Dallas's Little Souls. It's interesting, once again, when you started doing the voting for those who attended live last time, these were the books that really were trending right up at the top, right from the beginning. So we love seeing that, love seeing what you're interested in reading. So let me just do one thing. I have to click out here. We're going to start with fiction today. First book is All's Fair and Other California Stories by Linda Feyder. Let me just see if I can pull this down someplace. Let me just move this. I can't see it. Okay. I don't need to look at myself. And Other California Stories. And it's by Linda Feyder. It is one of our summer reading titles. In present-day Southern California, a diverse group of characters seeks the fulfillment and connection this sunny state has always promised. They come with hopes for a better lifestyle, for a change of perspective, or for the dry, mild West Coast weather. Between each of the 13 stories in All's Fair are interspersed several snapshot stories, poetic pauses that blend a set of images into an artistic visual unit, much like a brief cinematic experience. Every character in this collection is distinct from the next, but all of their stories unfold under the glare of the same California sun, the Southern California sun, a Western desert light so clear and unfiltered that it reveals everything. So there you've got All's Fair. Next, we've got A Family Affair coming from Robyn Carr. Anna McNichol knows how to take charge. Raised by a single mother, she's worked to ensure her 3 children have every advantage she didn't. And while her marriage has its problems, she values commitment and believes in till death do us part. Now an empty nester, she's at the peak of her career and ready to seize the opportunity to focus on her future. But life can change in an instant, and when her husband dies suddenly, Anna's carefully constructed world falls apart. The mysterious young woman at the memorial service confirms her husband has been keeping secrets, and Anna's determined to get to the truth. This is one of our summer reading titles. You can see by the cover, a perfect summer book. Next, we're going to stay in that summer vein. Brenda Novak's Summer on the Island, another summer reading book. It's on sale now. After the death of her U.S. Senator father, Marlo Matson travels to the small island off the coast of Florida, where she spent summers growing up to help her mother settle the family estate. For Marlo, the trip is a chance to reconnect after too long apart. It's also the perfect escape to help her feel grounded again once she's happy to share with friends. Ada and Claire, who are hoping to reset on their lives too. A leisurely beachfront summer promises the trio of women the opportunity to take deep healing breaths and explore new paths. But when her father's will reveals an earth-shattering secret that tarnishes his impeccable reputation and everything she thought she knew about her family, Marlo finds herself questioning her entire childhood and aspects of her future. Mustique Island by Sarah McCoy. This is a book reporter bets on selection, and I just interviewed Sarah last week. The interview went live yesterday. I absolutely love this book. It's one of those books that just takes you back to a setting and a place. Laura Dave, who wrote the last thing he told me last year, said it's a big-hearted, enchanting gem, and it truly is. So here's what we've got. It's January 1972, and Willie Mae Michaels' boat first kissed the dock of Mustique Island. Tucked into the southernmost curve of the Caribbean, Mustique is a private island that's become a haven for the wealthy and the privileged. Its owner is an eccentric British playboy, Colin Tennant, who is determined to turn the island into a luxurious neo-colonial retreat for his rich friends and into the royal court and exile for the Queen's rebellious sister, Princess Margaret. Willie Mae, a former beauty queen from Texas, who is no stranger to marital scandals, seeks out Mustique for its peaceful isolation. Determined to rebuild her life and her relationships with her two daughters, she constructs a fanciful white beach house across the island from Princess Margaret's and finds herself pulled into the island's inner circle of aristocrats, rock stars, yep, it's Mick and Bianca Jagger, and hangers-on. I love this book. I talked to Sarah way back at the beginning when she's starting to write this, and I said, oh my gosh, it's just like a very, very special place. You have to be really careful about how you write about it. And she found a book in the UK about Colin Tennant and read it from cover to cover about what this man had envisioned for Mustique Island and what he was going to do. And it was really, he was building this paradise. And it's kind of place where even if you go today, like over the holidays, I have friends who go, that no press is on there. No one talks about celebrities that they see there. All life there is very, very insular and private to this day. But you've got to see what happens on this island way back in the beginning. Sarah was on her way to visit the island to do research for this book on March 30th, 2020. And if I say the words March 2020, we all know what happened then. Tried to go back later on, and there were all kinds of reasons she couldn't go. And the house, Firefly, which is actually the one that's featured in this book, was actually like changed into something else. So she said her chances to go recapture Mustique in this particular place ended up not being able to happen. But we had a wonderful discussion about how she came to write this book. Next, we've got The Summer Place by Jennifer Weiner, who's been writing, this is the third book, and it's a loosely trilogy. It's like really 3 books that are set up on the Cape. And the wandering people that go in and out of these books, each is a standalone story. Nothing is exactly the same, but it's The Summer Place is where she was really trying to harness herself in these books. When her 22-year-old stepdaughter announces her engagement to her pandemic boyfriend, I always like that, Sarah Danhauser is shocked. Headstrong Ruby has already set a date and has spoken to her beloved Safta, Sarah's mother, Veronica, about having the wedding at the family's beach house in Cape Cod. Veronica is thrilled to be bringing the family together one last time before putting the big house on the market. As the wedding date approaches, Ruby finds herself grappling with the wounds left by her mother, who walked out when she was just a baby. Veronica ends up facing unexpected news and must revisit the choices she made long ago. Sarah's twin brother, Sam, is recovering from a terrible loss and confronting big questions about who he is. Sarah's husband, Eli, who's been inexplicably distant during the pandemic, confronts the consequences of a long ago lapse from his typical good guy behavior. And Sarah faces the alluring reappearance of someone from her past and a life that could have been. So this is going to be a whole colliding of people, what they knew about the past, what's happening to them in the future, in the present with these people, and where's this couple going in the future. It's a summer reading title as well, just out this week. Beach House Summer by Sarah Morgan. Yep, you've seen the tone here, people. This is the beach books. This is the beach time of year. Another summer reading book. When Joanna Whitman's famous ex-husband dies in a car accident, she doesn't know what to feel. But when she discovers that the young woman with him in the crash is pregnant, Joanna feels compelled to act, knowing exactly how brutal the media spotlight would be on celebrity chef Cliff Whitman's ex-wife and his mysterious female friend. Ashley Blake can't believe it when Joanna shows up in her hospital room and suggests they hide away at her beach house on a sleepy stretch of California coast. Joanna should be hating her, not helping her. But alone and pregnant, Ashley can't turn down Joanna's offer. Yet she knows if Joanna ever found out the real reason Ashley was in that car, their tentative bond would be shattered instantly. As secrets begin to spell out under the hot summer sun, this unlikely friendship is about to be put to the test. So we're getting a theme here. Everyone's going to go to the beach. You're going to find out secrets. It's all going to spill, and you're going to enjoy yourself reading them on the beach. I'm hoping you're picking up on my theme here. Okay, now we've got This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. And Emma Straub is very, very close to her father, Peter Straub, who is the horror writer. And she was thinking and channeling him when she was sitting and writing this book. On the eve of her 40th birthday, Alice's life isn't terrible. She likes her job, even if it's not the one she exactly expected. She's happy with her apartment, her romantic status, and her independence. and she adores her lifelong best friend. But her father is ailing, and she feels to her as if something is missing. When she wakes up the next morning, she finds herself back in 1996, reliving her 16th birthday. But it isn't just her adolescent body that shocks her or seeing her high school crush. It's her dad, the vital, charming 40-something version of her father with whom she is reunited. Now armed with a new perspective on her own life and his, some past events take on new meaning. Is there anything that she would change if she could? This Time Tomorrow is a #1 indie pick. Emma, if you don't know, also owns a bookstore in Brooklyn, besides being an author and the mother of 2 young children. So this is a woman who does it all. Next, from Maggie Shipstead, we've got You Have a Friend in 10A. There's a collection of stories. You may know Maggie because last year she wrote the book Shipstead. Well, no, that's her last name. I'm sorry. Last year she wrote The Great Circle, not Shipstead. Oh my gosh, take it full circle, Carol. It's coming out on May 17th. A love triangle plays out over the decades on a Montana dude ranch. A hurdler and a gymnast spend a single night together in the Olympic Village. Mistakes and mysteries weave an intangible web around an old man's deathbed in Paris, connecting disparate destinies. On the slopes of an unfinished ski resort, a young woman searches for her vanished lover. A couple's Romanian honeymoon goes ominously awry, and in the mesmerizing title story, a former child actress breaks with her life in a Hollywood cult. Maggie Shipstead's first collection of short stories excavates the complexities of love, sex, and in ways unsparing and a hilarious, sharp-eyed and tender way. So it is one of those books where, I mean, just look at this cover and you know that you're going to be in for something. Okay, what is really going to be happening in this book? Do you leap? Do you jump? Do you sit in the seat and cry? So I'm actually looking forward to seeing this because I always like stories that somehow connect with each other. And as you're reading them, you're like, wait a second, this is really interesting to see the way this plays through. And also when time is short, it's really nice to be able to read snippets of stories and then see how the whole thing comes together. In a lot of ways, Great Circle was like 2 books that was coming together, 2 different stories from 2 different time periods. So we've got that. From Lori Foster, we've got The Honeymoon Cottage, which is on sale on May 24th, another summer reading title. When it comes to creating the perfect happily ever after, Yardley Belanger is a bona fide miracle worker. The quirky wedding planner's country chic affairs have caused quite a stir in the small town of Cemetery. When it comes to her own love life, she's completely clueless. All Travis Long wanted was to give his little sister Sheena the wedding of her dreams. Ever since the tragic death of their parents, he's done everything he can to make her feel loved. Still, a country wedding in a place called Cemetery, but Yardley seems to know exactly what to do and how to do it, and Travis finds himself falling for her a little more each day. It's kind of funny as I'm reading this about the wedding planner. I got wedding this weekend with my best friend's daughter. And next weekend, my niece is getting married, and I'm hearing the word wedding planner. I know exactly what's involved in all of those plans. So it's like, okay, I know exactly how complicated these jobs can be and how crazy everything can get as well. Next, we've got Neruda on the Park. It's coming from Cleyvis, Natera. It's coming on May 24th. The Guerreros have lived in Northrop Park, a predominantly Dominican part of New York City, for 20 years. When demolition begins on a neighboring tenement, okay, let me see if I can do this one. Eusebia, an elder of the community, takes matters into her own hands by devising an increasingly dangerous series of schemes to stop the construction of the luxury condos. Meanwhile, Eusebia's daughter, Luz, a rising associate at a top Manhattan law firm who strives to live the bougie lifestyle their parents worked hard to give her, becomes distracted by a sweltering romance with the handsome white developer of the company her mother so vehemently opposes. As Luz's father, Vladimir, secretly designs their retirement home in the Dominican Republic, mother and daughter collide, ramping up tensions in Northrop Park, racing towards near fatal climax. So once again, we've got a family, like you notice we've got like this theme going on here of families, everybody's on the opposite side of things. It makes for good storytelling. Next, we've got The Shore by Katie Runde. And I heard Katie speak about this book, and it kind of like strikes a chord with me because in New Jersey, we don't call it the beach, we call it the shore. You're going down the shore. It's like very funny. It's not going up to the Cape, you're going down the shore. So what have we got going on in this book? Because she knows, because she actually lived in this area and her family actually worked the concessions on the boardwalk. Brian and Margot Dunn live year-round in Seaside, just steps away from the bustling boardwalk with their daughters Liz and Evie. The Dunns run a real estate company, making their living by quickly turning over rental houses for tourists. But the family's future becomes even more precarious when Brian develops a brain tumor, transforming into a bizarre, erratic version of himself. Amidst the chaos and new caretaking responsibilities, Liz begins flirting with a guy she should have known better than to pursue. Her younger sister Evie works in a candy shop and falls in love with her friend Olivia and secretly adopts a persona of a middle-aged mom in an online support group where she discovers her own mother's most vulnerable confessions. Meanwhile, Margot faces an impossible choice driven by grief, impulse, and the ways of the small town life in Seaside has shaped her. And this is really a view of like what it is to be like down the shore on the boardwalk, where everything happens between Memorial Day, Labor Day, and then everything gets quiet. There's a little shoulder season on each side. People at the shore always love the month of September. They said it's the best month to always be down there. But once again, it's like, what's going to happen in this really magical place. But for anybody from New Jersey, we know what the shore is. Next, we've got Half Blown Rose by Leesa Cross Smith. This is coming out on May 31st. Vincent, having grown up as the privileged daughter of artists, has a lovely life in many ways. At 44, she enjoys strolling the streets of Paris and teaching at the Modern Art Museum, where she has a vibrant group of friends, and she's even caught the eye of a young charismatic man named Loop. But Vincent is also in Paris to escape a painful betrayal. Her husband, Cillian, has published a best-selling book divulging secrets about their marriage and his own past, hinting that when he was a teenager, he may have had a child with a young woman back in Dublin before he moved to California and never returned. Now estranged from her husband, Vincent has agreed to see Cillian again at their son's wedding following the following summer, but Loop introduces new complications. Soon, they begin an intense affair, and Vincent finds herself loosening and blossoming. This is one of those covers I absolutely love, Half Blown Rose. I just love the way this looks. It's just beautiful. Next, we've got The Late Cover by Jane Hanff Korelitz, who you will probably recognize as the author of The Plot. Here we've got a really, really interesting story following the story of a wealthy New York City-based Oppenheimer family. From the first meeting of the parents, Salo and Joanna, under tragic circumstances, to their triplets being born during the early days of IVF. As children, the three siblings, Harrison, Lewin, and Sally, feel no strong familial bond and cannot wait to go their separate ways, even as their father becomes more distant and their mother more desperate. When the triplets leave for college, Joanna, faced with being truly alone, makes the decision to have a fourth child. So what role does this latecomer have in the family? And these three older siblings, I read this a couple of weeks ago and interviewed Jean for the Newburyport Book Festival. They not only don't get along, they cannot stand each other. Two of them end up going to the same college and don't even talk to each other while they're on the campus. And then this young sibling comes along and she's constantly talking about this thing that's really interesting is if all four eggs were harvested at the same time, they're really the same age, even though there's this 18-year gap. And I actually read a story in the New York Post about this a couple of weeks ago. There's a young girl who, I think she's 18, and her two sisters are 22, but they really would be considered triplets because the eggs were all harvested at the same time. And she has this video on TikTok that has been viewed 3.2 million times, where she talks about her relationship with her sisters and what's going on. And it's just a very interesting story. It's a very interesting concept of what happens when this other child is born so much later. Is she siblings to these people? Does she feel like a child to these people? What does she feel like? And also, what's been going on in this family all this time? She speaks a lot about art in this because Salo is a huge art collector of art that his wife Joanna really doesn't understand or even like. And believe it or not, Jean got a lot of her guidance on what to do with the art that she's picking from this book from Steve Martin, who is a huge art collector, and he shared with her what he thinks would be some good pieces to be talking about in the book. So there's a lot of art in here, and there's a lot of talk about exactly what the sibling rivalry is going to feel like. Next, we've got Meant to Be by Emily Giffin, which is coming on May 31st. The Kingsley family is beloved for their military heroics and political service. In 1967, after Joseph S. Kingsley Jr. is killed in a tragic accident, his charismatic son inherits the weight of that legacy. But despite his best intentions, Joe III has trouble meeting the expectations of a nation, as well as those of his exacting mother, Dottie. Meanwhile, no one ever expected anything of Kate Cooper. She too grew up fatherless, and after her mother marries an abusive man, she's forced to fend for herself. After being discovered by a model scout at 16, Kate decides that her looks may be the only ticket out of the cycle of disappointment that her mother has always inhabited. When Joe and Kate unexpectedly cross paths one afternoon, the connection is so instant and intense. But can the relationship survive the glare of the spotlight and the so-called Kingsley curse? Now, I am betting you could take Kingsley and drop in Kennedy and do some. Okay, I don't think I have to draw a map for you people. You're bright. This is going to be one of our summer reading books to give away. And you know that Emily always tells a really tight, really fun story. Next, we've got Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? This is Where Are You? This is going to be one of our summer reading picks as it comes out in paperback. Alice, the novelist, meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and asks him if he'd like to travel to Rome with her. In Dublin, her best friend Eileen is getting over a breakup and slips back into flirting with Simon, a man she's known since childhood. Alex, Felix, Eileen, and Simon are still young, but life's catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart, they have sex, they worry about sex, they worry about their friendships and the world which they live. Are they going to stand in the last lighted room before the darkness, bearing witness to something? Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? And I think we talked about Sally Rooney last time when we did this event. We're talking about, could she be for a younger audience? So if you have an opportunity to win this book, you're going to be able to win this for a young person in your life. So just keep in mind, we've got this coming up as one of our summer reading titles. Sally Rooney, Beautiful World, Where Are You? And you know what? Isn't there come a time when you're like in your 20s and you're sitting there going, where is this thing that everybody has promised me? And then you sit there and go, oh, it's real life. And then you realize it's all what happens in all the other books that we already talked about. Next, we've got It All Comes Down to This by Therese and Fowler. You will probably remember her for the book, let's see, I think it was A Good Neighborhood that came out in 2020. It's on sale on June 7th. Meet the Geller sisters, Beck, Claire, and Sophie, a trio of strong-minded women whose pragmatic, widowed mother, Marty, will be dying soon, taking all her secrets with her. Marty has ensured that her modest estate is easy for her family to deal with once she's gone, including a provision that the family's summer cottage on Mount Desert Island, Maine, must be sold, the proceeds split equally among the three girls. Enter C.J. Reynolds, an enigmatic Southerner ex-con with his own hidden past, who complicates the situation. All is not what it seems, and everything is about to change. This is another really terrific cover. I like the way they handle the type on this. Tracy Flick Can't Win by Tom Perrotta. This is a book reporter bets on. I read this last summer, and I can still remember where I was sitting on the deck. I absolutely love this book. It's a follow-up to the book Election, but I'd never read Election. And I confess, I did watch the movie after reading this book, after I heard Tom talk about it. And he said he was just driven to continue Tracy Flick's story. So here's what we've got. Tracy Flick is a hardworking assistant principal at a public high school in suburban New Jersey. Go New Jersey. She's still ambitious, but she's feeling a little stuck in midlife. She gets a jolt of good news when the longtime principal abruptly announces his retirement, creating a rare opportunity for Tracy to ascend into the top job. She throws herself into her work with renewed zeal, determined to prove her worth while also managing her personal life, a 10-year-old daughter, a needy doctor boyfriend, and a burgeoning meditation practice. But nothing ever comes easy to Tracy Flick, no matter how diligent or qualified she happens to be. As she broods about the past, Tracy becomes aware of storm clouds brewing in the present. She really is shoo-in to become the principal. Why is a school board president's wife trying so hard to be her friend? And why can't she get whatever she deserves? So it was just, I sat and I read this practically in one sitting, because it's one of those things, exactly what's going to happen. And you see some of the things that are going to start unfolding, but you still are laughing when they do unfold because he's got this sense of timing that just makes this work completely work. I remember finishing it, writing the publisher and saying, this is like a sure winner. So it's coming out June 7th. Now I've got some historical fiction, starting out with The Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. It's coming on May 31st, another summer reading title. Luz Alana has set sail from Santo Domingo, armed with 300 casks of rum, her two best friends, and one simple rule: under no circumstances is she to fall in love. In this city of lights, she tends to expand the rum business her family built over 3 generations. But buyers and shippers alike can't imagine doing business with a woman, never mind a woman of color. Enter James Evanston Sinclair, Earl of Darnick, who has spent a decade looking for purpose outside of his father's dirty money and dirtier dealings. Ignoring his title, he's built a whiskey brand that's the biggest and only passion. That is until he's confronted with a Spanish-speaking force of nature who turns his life upside down. Then we got A Caribbean Heiress in Paris. Onion Lane by Brooke Lee Foster is coming on May 31st. Everly Lee Farrow thinks she finally has life all figured out. Handsome fiance named Roland, a trust in her name, and a house in Bronxville waiting for her to fill it with 3 adorable children. That is until Roland brings her out to the Hamptons for a summer that will change everything. Most women could only dream of the engagement present that Roland unexpectedly bestows on Lee, a beachside hotel on the prized Gin Lane. But Lee's delight is clouded by unpleasant memories of another hotel, the Plaza, where she grew up in the shadow of her mother's mental illness. Shaking off the flashbacks, Lee resolves to dive into an unforgettable summer. But when tragedy strikes on the hotel's opening weekend, the cracks in Lee's picture-perfect future slowly begin to reveal themselves. Another stunning cover, and it's very, very period. I just love the way that was put together. I think covers really, like, I marvel at them because they're so very, very different, and how they can just evoke something just by looking at them. You know, so many times we're just sitting there and saying in a store, we'll go, oh, this really looks good. I feel like, picking it up and taking a look, and packaging matters so much. And you think about each book is really packaged differently. I mean, look, cereal, maybe they make a little tweak on the box. Here, each time a packaging is put together, it's completely different to say something. So this is The Lioness by Chris Bajelian. It's out this week. In Tanzania in 1964, an A-list actress, Katie Barstow, and her new husband, David Hill, decide to bring their Hollywood friends to the Serengeti for their honeymoon, and they envision paradise. Their glamorous guests expect civilized adventure, fresh ice from the kerosene-powered ice maker, dinners of cooked gazelle meat, and plenty of stories to tell over lunch back on Rodeo Drive. What Katie and her glittering entourage do not expect is this: a kidnapping gone wrong, their guides bleeding out in the dirt, and a team of Russian mercenaries herding their hostages into Land Rovers, guns to their head. As the powerful sun gives way to the night, the gunmen shove them into abandoned huts, and Katie prays for a simple thing: to see the sunrise one more time. So there we've got The Lioness. My son Greg, who is a Land Rover enthusiast, I mean, please, there are a couple in the driveway, 2 don't even run, but if he was, he will probably read this just because it's got a Land Rover in it. It's like he'll gallop into the room if there's a Land Rover in a television show. Next, we've got My Wife is Missing by DJ Palmer. Family vacation turns into a nightmare for Michael Hart when he discovers that his wife, Natalie, and their 2 children have disappeared from the New York City hotel room. Horrified, he fears they've been kidnapped. Michael's frantic search to find them takes a shocking turn. We discover that Natalie appears to have left quite willingly, taking the children with her. The police want to know why, and so does Michael. But there may be a reason why Natalie ran, something Michael can't tell the police: the truth about his past. While untangling his deceptions might be key to locating Natalie, Michael also knows it could be his undoing. To find his wife, he must now turn to the one person capable of exposing all that he has been hiding. My Wife is Missing by DJ Palmer. Next, this is out in paperback. It's one of a Bets On selection last year. I interviewed last year with TJ Newman, and it's a summer reading title giveaway this year in paperback. So this is the book you probably will all remember me talking about. It's coming out in paperback on May 17th. You've just boarded a flight to New York. There are 143 other passengers on board. What you don't know is 30 minutes before the flight, her pilot's family was kidnapped. His family to live, everybody on the plane must die. The only way the family will survive is if the pilot follows his orders and crashes the plane. Enjoy the flight. See what happens. Brisk, it's really, really quick. And she just hits like a lot of notes. She's a former flight attendant. Those who've been long watching us do the Bookaccino live events know this. And she started scrambling notes about this book on little napkins sitting in the back of the plane and transcribing them into notes when she landed. And she noticed a lot in the jump seat. She'd sit in the jump seat, especially in first class, because she was very seasoned. And she'd watch the passengers and watch how they behaved. And when you think about it, the flight attendant is usually an anonymous person in a lot of ways, sitting in the front. Oh, you know, they're there to help you get into your seat, maybe load your luggage, maybe like to bring you the drink, maybe bring you food. But beyond that, you really don't pay that much attention to them. And she's sitting in first class in the jump seat, facing the passengers, facing 10, 12, 16 people, and sort of just figuring out what their stories might be. She ran the idea about this book by a pilot one time, and when she saw his horrified look, she knew they had the basic for a plot. So there we've got Falling by T.J. Newman. Now we've got The Lost Summers of Newport by Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and Karen White. You probably know, if you've been attending these events for a while, these three love to write together. They also love to get together and plot the books. They love to get together and talk. They love to get together and have wine. And for the 2 years of the pandemic, man, trying to keep these three apart and just Zooming was not the same for writing the books, because in Zoom does not dispense wine quite the same way. They each had to pour their own. So three of them gotten together. They've written this book. It's coming out on May 17th. It's called The Lost Summers of Newport. It's a novel of money and secrets set among the famous mansions of Newport, Rhode Island, spanning over a century from the Gilded Age to present day. This is the perfect summer read for any beach bag with three timelines of women taking charge of their futures, set in an ultimate glamorous location. What's also fun about the three of them is they will each write a section of this book, and they'll never divulge which one each of them wrote. And I've guessed, and they've never told, and I've also been told I was wrong in the past. They've also said to me that I will be allowed to interview them. And this time they promised to let me talk, because I interviewed them for HarperCollins for a live event a couple of years ago. And the three of them never even let me ask a question. I'd be like, okay, here's my question. And then the three of them would just take off. So I got a note from Karen. She said, if you interview us, we promise we'll behave this time as you interview us. And hey, look, anything set up in Newport, I'm there. So looking forward to reading this and talking to them. Next, we've got Metropolis by B.A. Shapiro. We've got 6 people, 6 secrets, 6 different backgrounds. They would never have met if not for their connection to the Metropolis storage warehouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts. When someone falls down an elevator shaft at the facility, each becomes caught up in an intensifying chain of events. We meet Serge, an unstable but brilliant street photographer, Marta, an undocumented immigrant finishing her dissertation and hiding from ICE, Liddy, an abused wife and mother who recreates her children's bedroom in her unit, Jason, a former corporate lawyer now practicing in the facility, Rose, the office manager, who takes illegal kickbacks to let renters live in the building, and Zach, the building's owner and an ex-drug dealer who scans Serge's photos as he searches for clues to the accident. But was it an accident? What happened in this building called Metropolis Storage Warehouse? So it's once again going to be all these little different connected stories. And I love when those really come together and come together well. You may remember B.A. Shapiro as the author of The Art Forger. Next, we've got Take Your Breath Away by Linwood Barkley. Linwood and I are friends. We were on the phone this morning, and I had already told him that I think the turquoise on this cover was for me. And he joked and said, yes, it was. I know it's a joke, but hey, whatever. We're good friends. It's coming out on May 17th. It's going to be a bet on. Here's what we've got going on. One weekend when Andrew Mason was on a fishing trip, his wife, Bree, vanished without a trace. Most everyone assumed Andy had gotten away with murder, but the police could never build a strong case against him. Andy drank too much to numb the pain and became a pariah in the place he once called home. Now, 6 years later, Andy's finally put his book life back together. He sold the house he once shared with Bree and moved away. Tell the truth, he wasn't really sad to hear that the old place was razed and a new house was built on the site. He settled down with a new partner, Jane, and life is good. But his world is about to shatter because one woman shows up at his old address screaming, Where is my house? What happened to my house? And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, the woman who bears a striking resemblance to Bree is gone. The police are notified, and old questions and dark suspicions resurface. What is really interesting these days is, if you notice, people can rarely get away with crime. A lot of people got away with a lot of these crimes before because there were no cameras on everybody's front porch that's documenting life. I mean, that guy who escaped from the prison with the prison guard, how were they caught? Because he went into the car wash, into the place where he had a camera up above, and they identified him there. I mean, come on, people. But you realize how much is easily figured out just by looking at cameras that are on people's front porches. So when they actually start looking at this woman, it's like, oh my gosh, she's back. What ends up happening? Who is Bree, and how did she end up coming back into his life again? So what we've got here is a missing woman, a husband suspected, and the truth will take your breath away. Next, we've got City of Orange by David Yoon, coming out on May 24th. A man wakes up in an unknown landscape, injured and alone. He used to live in a place called California, but how did he wind up here with a head wound and a bottle of pills in his pocket? He navigates his surroundings, one rough shape at a time. Here lies a pipe, there a reed that could be carved into a weapon. Beyond a city he once lived in, he could swear his daughter's name began with a J, but what was it exactly? And then he encounters an old man, a crow, and a boy, and he realized that nothing is what he thought it was, neither the present nor the past. He can't even recall the features of his own face and wonders, who am I? So where we've got David Yoon, he's the best-selling author of Version 0. Next, we've got James Lee Burke, Every Clock Rolled in Blood. And everybody knows James Lee Burke consistently delivers. Here he's being called the America's best novelist. So novelist Aaron Holland Broussard is shattered when his young daughter Fannie Mae dies suddenly. As he tries to honor her memory by saving two young men from a life of crime amid their opioid-ravaged community, he's drawn into a network of villainy that includes a violent former Klansman, a far-from-holy minister, a biker club posing as evangelicals, and a murderer hiding in plain sight. His only ally is the state police officer Ruby Spotted Horse, a no-nonsense woman who harbors some powerful secrets in her cellar. Despite the air of mystery surrounding her, Ruby is the only one that Aaron can trust. That is, until the ghost of Fannie Mae shows up, guiding her father through a tangled web of the present and the past, and helping him vanquish his foes from both this world and the next. So there we've got Every Cloak Rolled in Blood. Got Two Nights in Lisbon coming from Chris Pavoni, and I am hoping to interview him. Chris is somebody who's, I have not read his books in the past, but it's one where it's never been like the right season for me to be reading. I've always been like caught up in something else. But I've definitely asked him to get me a copy of this book because he's gotten such high praise from so many people. I feel like he should be more on my radar. It's coming out on May 24th. Ariel Price wakes up in Lisbon alone. Her husband is gone. No warning, no note, not answering his phone. Something is wrong. She starts with hotel security and the police, the American embassy, each confronting questions she can't fully answer. What is he doing in Lisbon? Why would he drag her along on this business trip? Who would want to harm him? And why does Ariel know so little about her new, much younger husband? The clock is ticking. Ariel is increasingly frustrated and desperate, running out of time. And the one person in the world who can help her is the one person she least wants to ask. So John Grisham has said, I defy anyone to read the first 20 pages of this breakneck novel and then try to put it down for 5 minutes. It can't be done. So I think that I really love the cover on this one too. So I'm going to delve into Chris's work, starting with this one, and hoping to interview him. Sparring Partner, speaking of John Grisham, it's coming on May 31st. It's a first collection of novellas where law is a common thread, but he has several surprises in store. Homecoming marks the return of Jake Briggins, but he's not in the courtroom. He's called upon to help an old friend, Max Stafford, a former lawyer who stole money from his clients. Strawberry Moon, Cody Wallace is only 3 hours away from execution, and he has one final request. Sparring partners are the Malloy brothers, Kirk and Rusty, two successful young lawyers who inherited a once prosperous firm when its founder, their father, was sent to prison. As the firm disintegrates, the resulting fiasco falls in the lap of Deontha Bradshaw, the only person the partners trust. So here we've got sparring partners, collection of novellas, something different for Grisham, something perfect for summer reading. Now we've got some biographies, memoirs, and some nonfiction. First is really interesting. Miss Chloe, a memoir of literary friendship with Toni Morrison by A.J. Verdale. It's out this week. Toni Morrison was born Chloe A. Wofford, as was a towering figure in the world of literature when she entered A.J. Verdale's life. Their literary friendship was a young writer's dream, simultaneously exhilarating, intimidating, fulfilling, and challenging. The relationship crossed generations, spanned several cycles in life, exhibited highs and low notes, reached and dipped, and found its way. And like many women friends, these two writers imagined and built a relationship that was responsive, inventive, and engaged. In Miss Chloe, Verdale chronicles her grief at Morrison's passing and finds comfort in her astute advice, wisdom Verdale didn't always recognize at the time. I think this promises to be a very, very interesting book because we all know Toni Morrison from her own work, but what was it like to have a friendship with her, especially a literary friendship? Next, we got Mother Noise, a memoir by Cindy House. It opens with Cindy House 20 years into recovery from a heroin addiction, grappling with how to tell her 9-year-old son about her past. She wants him to learn on his history from her, not from anyone else. She worries about the effect this truth may have on him. Told in essays and graphic narrative shorts, the stunning memoir delves deep into our responsibility as parents while celebrating the moments of grace and generosity that mark a true friendship. In this case, her benefactor and champion through the years, David Sedaris. So we've got this beautiful memoir, and David says about this, scope of Cindy House's knowledge is as remarkable as her humor, her depth, and her great skill as an essayist. This is her time. So Mother Noise, a memoir, really sounds interesting. And next, because we segue so beautifully, thanks to Tom Donadio, our editorial director, we have Happy Go Lucky by David Sedaris. See the tie in there, folks? We move from one to the other. Back when restaurant menus were still printed on paper. Remember that when you didn't have to go in and scan and you could just like read the menu, and wearing a mask or not was a decision made mostly on Halloween. Remember that also? David Sedaris spent his time doing normal things. And then the pandemic hits, and like so many others, he's stuck on lockdown, unable to tour and read for audiences. The part of his work he loves the best. His work gradually settles into a new reality. He finds himself changed. His offer to fix a stranger's teeth rebuffed, he straightens his own and ventures in the world with new confidence. Newly orphaned, he considers what that means in his 7th decade, no longer to be someone's son. And back on the road, he discovers a battle-scarred America. David Sedaris usually makes me laugh so much. I remember listening to his books on audio with him narrating when we were driving into the city and just sitting and laughing with tears rolling down my face. But I think this thing where, we always talk now to mask or not mask. Think about the masks that we're putting on. It'd be like you were a kid playing doctor in the hospital or playing nurse or something like that when you were growing up. And now it's like all these things where even the menu printed on paper, you get into the restaurant, and the other night we went out and they said, oh, like just click here for the specials. Oh, it's not working. Here they are on paper. And it's all like this crazy stuff that you just never saw happening a couple of years ago. And next, we've got some July titles to look forward to because we always want you to be able to look ahead. Got Reputation by Sarah Vaughan. And I'm including this one because I like many of others of you, I watched Anatomy of a Scandal on Netflix and was completely enthralled with the story. I would have made some changes to what is happening because I thought it was a little bit preposterous, but I really did enjoy watching it. And I just thought there were so many parts of it that were just really, really terrifically done. This is a new book by her coming out on July 5th. As a politician, Emma has sacrificed a great deal for her career, including her marriage and relationship with her daughter, Flora. A former teacher, the glare of the spotlight is unnerving for Emma, particularly when it leads to countless insults, threats, and trolling as she tries to work in the public eye. 14-year-old Flora is encountering heartless bullying. When another teenager takes her own life, Emma lobbies for a new law to protect women and girls from the effects of online abuse. Now, Emma and Flora find their personal lives uncomfortably intersected, but then the unthinkable happens. A man is found dead in Emma's home, a man she has every reason to be afraid of and want gone. Fighting to protect her reputation and determined to protect her family at all costs, Emma is pushed to the limits as the worst happens and her life is torn apart. And anybody who watched Anatomy of Scandal or read the book is going to realize the same kind of threads are going through of what's going on. It's really terrifically well done. So I'm looking forward to reading this one as well. From Tess Gerritsen, we've got her returning to Rizzoli and Isles. Remember her Rizzoli and Isles series? Been away from it for a while. This new book is called Listen to Me. It's coming out on July 5th. Boston homicide detective Jane Rizzoli and medical examiner Maura Isles are newly plagued by what seems to be a completely senseless murder. Sophie Suarez, a widow and nurse, was universally liked by her neighbors, and she lies bludgeoned to death in her own home. But anything can happen behind closed doors, and Sophia seemed to have plenty of secrets in her past, especially in her last days, making covert phone calls to what trackless burner phones. When Jane finally makes a connection between Sophia and the victim of a hit and run from months earlier, the case only grows more blurry. What exactly was Sophia involved in? Any of you who've watched the Rizzoli and Isles show on TV will have those two characters permanently cemented in your brain as you start to go read this, which is the thing that happens after a book is made into a movie or made into a show. But I can picture the dialogue going back and forth, and I can actually hear their voices and their accents. So I'm thinking of that as I think about reading this book. Debbie Macomber's book, The Best Is Yet to Come, is one of our summer reading titles. It's coming out on July 12th. New beginning in charming Oceanside, Washington is exactly what Hope Godwin needs after the death of her twin brother. There are plenty of distractions, like her cozy cottage, the slightly nosy neighbor landlords next door, and a brewing drama among her students at the local high school. But Hope still feels that something still is missing. That is until her landlords convince her to volunteer at the animal shelter. There she meets Shadow, a rescue dog that has everyone given up on, but Hope believes he's worth saving. Like Shadow, shelter volunteer Cade Lincoln Jr. is suffering from injuries most can't see. A wounded ex-Marine, he identifies with Shadow, assuming they're both beyond help. Hope senses what they each need is someone to believe in them, and she's got a lot of love to give. So there we've got The Best Is Yet to Come. Next, we've got Viola Shipman. We've got The Edge of Summer. It's coming on paperback on July 12th. Devastated by the sudden death of her mother, a quiet, loving, and intensely private Southern seamstress called Miss Mabel, who overflowed with pearls of Ozark's wisdom, but never spoke of her own family, Sutton Douglas makes the impulsive decision to pack up and head north to the Michigan resort town, where she believed she'd find answer to the lifelong questions she not only had about her mother's past, but also about her place in the world. Recalling Miss Mabel's sewing notions that were her childhood toys, Sutton buys a collection of buttons at an estate sale from Bonnie Lyons, the imposing matriarch of the Lakeshore community. Propelled by a handful of trinkets left behind by her mother and glimpses into the history of the magical Lakeshore town, Sutton becomes tantalized by the possibility that Bonnie is the grandmother she never knew. But is she? Sutton cautiously befriends Bonnie and is taken into her confidence. She begins to uncover the secrets about her family that Miss Mabel so carefully hid, and about the role that Sutton herself unwittingly played in it all. So there we've got The Edge of Summer. Interesting, Wade grew up in the Wade Rouse, who is his pen name is Viola Shipman. Wade grew up in the Ozarks and then did move to a northern Michigan resort town. So you feel like he's got both places very cemented in his mind as he's sitting here and doing the storytelling here. Also, just to back up for a second, I read his memoir, Magic Season, last weekend or the weekend before. And it's truly well done. I wrote about it in the newsletter last week. And it's interesting when I see somebody who's written humorous essays and then gone on to write the Viola books, do something very different and go back and write a memoir about his own life and his relationship with his father, told over the timeline of a baseball season. An actual baseball game, inning one, inning two, and what happened along the way. Extremely, extremely well done. But you also see where you've got the seeds of everything he wrote before and what he's writing now. I like that when I can see that with an author. Next, we've got Helltown, the untold story of a serial killer on Cape Cod by Casey Sherman. I know a number of you entered to win this book in a recent contest that we have. It's coming out on July 12th. I love these kinds of stories, the untold story of a serial killer. I haven't listened to a good podcast of a true crime, and I really want to get back to listen to one. I know, what does that say about me? But here in the winter of 1969, the bodies of 4 young women were discovered in a cemetery near the tip of Cape Cod, in a place once known as Helltown. The victims have been shot, stabbed, dismembered, and mutilated. As investigators would soon learn, the perpetrator was a young, handsome serial killer named Tony Costa, a bizarre former taxidermist with a split personality and a penchant for violence. Costa ultimately mobilized friends in the hippie community for support and retribution, and captivated literary icons and rivals Kurt Vonnegut and Norman Mailer. He embarked on a daring cat and mouse game with investigators who, as the body count kept growing, were desperate to put an end to the killing season on Cape Cod. So for those of you who are headed to Cape Cod this summer, you can put this in your bag, and then you can put the book back by Jen Weiner in the bag, and you've got your Cape Cod summer, the sweet, the tough, the rough. We'll see what happens. Don't go in the waves. Okay, now we've got The It Girl from Ruth Ware, and I love books by Ruth Ware. They're what I call one-sit reads. That's coming out on July 12th. April Clark Cliveden is the first person Hannah Jones met at Oxford. Vivacious, bright, occasionally vicious, and the ultimate it girl, she quickly pulls Hannah into her dazzling orbit. Together, they developed a group of devoted and inseparable friends, Will, Hugh, Ryan, and Emily, during their first term. By the end of the second, April was dead. Now, a decade later, Hannah and Will are expecting their first child, and the man convicted of killing April, former Oxford porter John Neville, has died in prison. Relieved to have finally put the past behind her, Hannah's world is rocked when a young journalist comes knocking and presents new evidence that Neville may have been innocent. As Hannah reconstructs and reconnects with old friends and delves deeper into the mystery of April's death, she realizes the friends she thought she knew may have something to hide, including a murder. And the theme here is really about the posh schools and people living in the posh schools, where there's one person that always stands out, and it's the one that everybody circles around. And who's the it girl, and what is the it girl going to bring to the story? Next, we've got Sister, Mother, Warrior by Vanessa Riley. Last year, she put out a book called Island Queen, and it was one that really took off with people. She did such a good job of portraying what happened on that island, the woman that she's writing about. This is coming out on July 12th. And once again, she's going to bring readers a vivid, sweeping novel of the Haitian Revolution based on the true life stories of 2 extraordinary women, the first Empress of Haiti, Marie-Claire Bonheur, and Grand Toya, a West African-born warrior who helped lead the rebellion that drove out the French and freed the enslaved people of Haiti. Both an emotionally palpable love story and a detail-rich historical novel, Sister, Mother, Warrior tells the often overlooked history of the most successful Black uprising in history. Riley celebrates the tremendous courage and resilience of the revolutionaries and the formidable strength and intelligence of Toya, Marie-Claire, and the countless other women who fought for freedom. So I know that Vesta puts a lot of work into her research. I interviewed her last year about Island Queen, and just terrific about what she had been writing. And before that, she'd been written romance novels. So the switch to historical fiction is a completely different gig for her. Next, we've got Sugar and Salt by Susan Wiggs. This is coming out on July 26th. Jerome Sugar Barnes learned the art of baking in his grandmother's bakery, also called Sugar, on historic Perdita Street in San Francisco. He supplies the baked goods to the lost and found bookshop across the street. When a newcomer, the restaurant that shares his commercial kitchen, loses its longtime tenant, a newcomer moves in, Margot Salton, a barbecue master from Texas. Margot isn't exactly on the run, but she needs a fresh start. She needs taking care of herself a whole life, and the dream has been to open a restaurant somewhere far, far from Texas. Margot instantly takes to Jerome's grandmother, the lively, opinionated Ida, and the older woman proves to be a great mentor, and Margot is drawn to Jerome. But just as she starts to feel happy about her future, her past in Texas comes back to haunt her. I think that's a really beautiful cover. I would like to be able to dive right into that cake. And this is going to be one of our summer reading selections, so you can dive into it too. And we've got some notable May paperback releases. We've got Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson. And do note that if you're in a book club, this is the book club giveaway book that we're going to be doing for What's Your Book Group Reading for May. I loved interviewing Ash and talking to her about this book last year. If you listen to that interview, you'll find out why she only drinks bottled water to this day. Something I remember hearing when she talked about it at a Simon & Schuster preview. New packaging on this book coming out. So if you watch the interview and you see something different, they repackaged it for the paperback. Actually, every one of the books that's featured here, I've interviewed the authors. The other day, I think we figured out we've interviewed 118 authors, and we've done probably 119 now and 127 interviews. So there's a lot. If you want to go out and explore what we've been doing for the Book Reporter Talks to Video podcast series, there's a lot. Got Leesa Jewell, The Night She Disappeared. Got The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz. Turnout by Megan Abbott. Falling by TJ Newman. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Morningside Heights by Joshua Henkin. So those are just some of the notable paperbacks this month. We have our new and paperback feature where you can discover more. All of these have interviews to go with them. Also, these are my early bets on selections from this year. I think that the Lisa Sconolini Might Happen to the Bennetts might be new since the last time we spoke. Long Weekend might be new. I know that Sister Stardust and Sally Hepworth's The Younger Wife are both new there. So it's just a collection. And every once in a while I do a pullback and I say, okay, what am I actually like? What have I actually read this year? What's actually happened? And I tell you, I can talk about each one of these books and still would put them in people's hands and say, this is why I think you should read them. I think it'd be a bet on. These are the most recent interviews that we've done. I spoke about talking to Sarah about Mustique Island, Amanda Eyre Ward. I spoke with her about the lifeguards. Sister Stardust, I talked to John Green. Long Women, Gilly McMillan, John Searle's The Last Affair, and My Darling Husband with Kimberly Bell. So that's the most recent group that we've done. And our next Bookaccino Live evening event, book group event, is going to be Janet Scuslin Charles. We're going to be discussing the Paris Library. It's going to be on Wednesday, May 25th at 8 p.m. You still have time to read the book, The Paris Library, to be part of this conversation. Janet is terrific. She actually was most of the year still in Paris. She actually spends a couple of months in Montana, which is where her family grew up. And you'll see, if you've read the book, you see the ties between the two places in her story. She's going to be joining us. It's somebody that a number of you have asked, like, oh, could we just have a conversation with her about her book? So we're looking forward to doing that on May 25th. And our next Bookaccino Live event will be on Wednesday, June 15th. I want you to take notes simply because it's not the second Wednesday of the month, which is usually what we do. It's the third. And it's a reason because June starts on Wednesday. June 1st is on a Wednesday. So we decided to do June 15th. So that will be the next time to be able to do that. And then you'll be able to sign up on Book Reporter later on today. It will also be in all the newsletters that go out over the next couple of weeks. If you haven't signed up for the newsletters, kind of missing out because a lot of the events that we talk about are, you can first read about them there, which gives you a little bit more time to go and read the book ahead. Thank you everyone for joining us for Bookaccino Live, and we look forward to seeing you next month in June, where we bring you books that are coming out from June until July, and then we tease some books that are coming out in August as well. Thanks for joining us, everyone.